Well, hi everyone, my name's Gillian and I work at HMP Law Newton in Durham, and my colleague is Nicola there. She'll give you a little wave. Nicola works in, I did say HMP Style in Manchester, but I've got corrected this morning. It's actually Cheshire Nicola works at. We work in the women's estate, so we work within the prison delivering maths in the education department. Our initial proposal was to focus on engaging learners to improve success rates from the transition of the legacy standards to the reform standards. As when we changed over, we did see it had a really a decline in success rates. I went from 96% down to 0% success rate. So that's just an example that was within Law Newton. However, I did only have 4 learners. Come the 23rd of March, the COVID pandemic turned prison education upside down, causing education to stop. And we all got sent home. So the COVID pandemic, the prison transitioned to lockdown. Tutors started to work from home. There was no on-site delivery whatsoever. We had no contact or communication with our learners at all. And we don't have the luxury of internet access within the prison. So we do not have any means of online delivery or anything at all. We didn't even know what we were going to be teaching at this point. And as you know, you might not know, but prison education teaches and delivers 52 weeks of the year. So it's not like further education or a college or anything like that. We do deliver every week. We're delivering something in education. I'm just going to pass you over to Nicola now. She's just going to go on to the demands of the change for prison education.
Hi everyone. So as Gillian's just said, we have a contractual obligation to deliver education 52 weeks of the year. This has been something that we've bid on through Novus, and we predominantly take the education throughout most of the prisons in the UK. Obviously with the lockdown, we had to have a massive rethink about how we were going to restructure our curriculum, our resources, how we were going to be able to support learners with special educational needs. These women, stereotypically haven't had the best education for one reason or another. And on top of that, with special educational needs, they were facing more hurdles than most. Communication, as Sarah and Gillian said, was for quite a few months nothing. We were handing out work packs, but we weren't able to communicate with any of our learners, be it good or bad, and it was very, very difficult. We weren't able really to track progression as we would do normally as well, so that was another hurdle that we had to overcome. One of the biggest problems, one of the biggest challenges we've faced is guaranteeing the authenticity of learners' works. So whilst we might be handing out the workbooks and we might be getting them back, we had no way of guaranteeing that the work that was being sent back was from the individual it was intended for. A lot of these women, in fact, the majority of the women cohabit in houses or shared cells. And I'm sure, as you all know, if you're struggling with something, the first thing you do is you reach out and ask for help. So we couldn't be sure about that. Exams, obviously, like a lot of places, were postponed, but ours have been postponed a lot longer than normal because we still have no face-to-face contact, although we are hoping for a change to that in the new year. Feedback, I think it links hand in hand with the quarantine issue. So we were receiving work packs. These could take anything from a week to 3 weeks to get back. By the time they'd been through quarantine, we'd filled in feedback, re-quarantined, Obviously, staff were only on site for a limited amount of time. So all these were massive, massive implications to our delivery. Okay, so just looking at what we actually deliver in our prison, this was what we had to modify moving forward. So we offer 4 maths qualifications as standard, although we do offer more in normal times. So we have a full certificate entry level 3. Then we have for the higher level learners, level 1 or level 2. And during lockdown, we decided to introduce the bite-sized certification, which was mainly aimed at women who potentially hadn't got the time frame that we would need to get them through a full qualification. And it's made up of lots of different units for all the different elements of the maths qualification. Okay. As Gillian mentioned before, as the working from home groups evolved, the maths group had to very quickly remanufacture it and start again from scratch on lots of our maths resources. So we worked on workbooks which we could send out to the women through whatever method we chose to do. But we had to implement a standardized process throughout. I'm not going to insult anyone's intelligence by talking you through all the bullet points, but these were the considerations that we had to make. So they had to be easy to read, they had to have worked examples, they had to have reflection points, which we felt was probably one of the most important parts of our remote delivery. How do we know if we're doing a good job if the women can't feed back to us? Okay, back to you, Gillian.
Back to me. So we had our lovely new resources, well, covered all the standards, everything like that, reflection points. However, with non-face delivery and no communication, we had the hurdle of how do we track our learners? How do we show the progression? So Nicola and myself came up with an idea of a learning journal that goes to and from education. And in the learning journal, it contains a how-to guide. So what they're going to be doing on the course, how to use the remote workbooks, how to use the journal. It has the BKSB diagnostic starting point. It has the appeals procedure, marking policy, so how we're going to mark the work, how we're going to spag the work, the feedback. It's got the ILP in there to allow us to set targets, to set learning support targets, to do a review with our learners. It's got the progression tracker, so they can see the distance they are travelling and the progression they're making, and also the glossary of terms, because moving up and down the country, the terminology is always different, even though the education is the same, the course they're doing, the terminology might be different. So the glossary terms is in there, and there's also a self-dictionary. If there's something what they're really not sure about, they would write that down in the self-dictionary, and the tutor can write the meaning of that to support their understanding. So we are rolling out with these as well. Then that takes us on to the transition of the remote learning and the delivery for 2020. This started around about September. The induction process would have been face-to-face over in education, where learners would do initial assessments. However, that has totally changed as well. We have got to do paper-based, relying on the learner getting the work. They haven't moved cells, stuff like that. So the induction process now, the learners will complete an initial assessment, and a PLP will be created either by paper-based, or we would send that over, or a support worker will give them a call to do the personal learning plan. This is not always the case. As you know, Nicola said they don't answer the phone sometimes. Allocations, once we get the the learner on the programme. So once they come to maths, we then send out a diagnostic. Again, we send that over to the learner. They complete that and they complete the enrolment form. That comes back, the diagnostic is then marked.
A moment, hold on a minute, just to say, you've got 2 minutes left.
All right, no problem. So that's the process anyway. I'm going to skip the ILP part and everything like that and go on to the next section. So at the moment, we've got a new curriculum model, we've got new resources, new tracking documents, and we've also got the distribution of our packs at the moment. So that's our progress. And these were the concerns what we had, and I'll pass you over to Nicola for those.
Okay, so many of these, each and every prison educator has experienced. The learners aren't keen to return work. As I said before, special educational needs are struggling with the remote learning. The way that the quarantine is working, meaning that we're very, very stretched in how quickly we can turn around work. Learner engagement, you know, these women have got other priorities. They've not seen the families for months. Regime has changed completely. They're in the middle of a pandemic and they're not quite sure if they get ill, how ill are they going to get? And equipment, simple as, you know, providing a calculator. Calculators have batteries. Batteries can be used for ulterior motives. So all of these were considerations that we had to make while doing the distance learning. Okay, just very quickly have a scan over this. It's positive and negative feedback from the learners. It's genuine learner feedback. If you look and see that there might be a spelling mistake or a grammar issue, this is because this has been typed as the learner would write. It's not me and Gillian. Okay, Gillian?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And we had to change our research project proposal question because we couldn't improve scores based on this current situation. So we've decided to focus on how likely women were to engage with this new delivery model without face-to-face relationships being forged. And I think the last slide. Okay, so things that we're going to look at, we're going to gather data on is the age of the learner, the sentence length, whether they're a returning prisoner, where they're actually living. Is it a chaotic house or is it a quiet cell where they can work quietly and independently? You know, what their score was in English. Is English actually a barrier to them learning maths at a higher level? So all this is our data gathering. This is going to be our next step, and we're going to see if we can come up with some real evidence to prove that specific learners in specific groups work better and have higher success rates than perhaps others. Okay, any questions, anyone?
I would say pop your questions in chat so you don't forget them, and you might need to send them directly to Nicola and Gillian afterwards. But are you still, we'll move on quickly. Are you there, Ben?
I am. Just let me share my screen. That was great, guys. Enjoyed that.
Thank you very much.
Right, there we go. Can you see that?
Yep.
Right, hi everyone. I'm Ben from Chesterfield College. I'm going to explain our journey so far with our OTLA project. So to start off with, we had some grand plans and we wanted to look at visual maths, manipulatives, maths in context, and a mastery model to improve engagement. Now, obviously, this is very optimistic, and Andy, I think, said, don't try and change the world with one project. So, and Sarah as well was very insistent on us narrowing it down. So we chose increasing engagement using manipulatives and visual maths. But then obviously COVID happened. We thought it wouldn't be safe to use manipulatives in a COVID world. We were quite optimistic and we thought that maybe things will be back to normal coming in September, but obviously that didn't happen. So we had to kind of change our proposal and our focus. So after a consultation and a rethink, we decided to look at online assessment and we wanted to do that through a website called Dr. Frost Maths. If you're not familiar with Dr. Frost Maths, I was going to show you a video, but I think it'll take too long. Very conscious about time. It's basically a big bank of past GCSE exam questions and other questions that have been created by various practitioners. And it's a really good way to kind of assess online. It's got other features like an online whiteboard, a competition game, which is great. But yeah, we first heard of it in, I think, about May, June, and we all attended as a department some training on it, just to get our heads around it and think about how we might implement it come September. Excuse me. So yeah, we thought it'd be a good idea to kind of focus on this as our OTLA project, as we would be having a go at it anyway. So implementing Dr. Frost, lots of members of staff have implemented it in different ways. We've looked at implementing it for classwork, homework, and a formative assessment, which I'll talk about in a minute. I went for the classwork. I teach a group called Kickstart, who they have 6 hours of English and maths a week, so it's very heavy on the English and maths and doesn't have a vocational element. So I got quite lucky and I was able to book a computer room for one of our lessons during the week. So every week we go down to the computer room and spend about an hour to 45 minutes having a go at some of these tasks on Dr. Frost. But as I said, some members of staff set it as a homework task, and eventually we set it as a formative assessment, but I'll mention that in a minute. So some of the feedback we get from Dr. Frost is extremely valuable. So you can see here, I've got my learners along the left-hand side, and I've got basically the topic test that I set them along the top. So you get a really nice view of what students can and can't do. And you can go into each one of these tasks and see how learners have answered. I can give feedback, and you can also set learners to have a little whiteboard next to their question where they have to put working out, which is nice to be able to delve into some of those mistakes that they make. So a few of us did this. I did it quite heavily with my group, and I shared that with the team, and we decided that it has massive potential. And with COVID, and many members of staff being off and learners being off, we decided to do our first formative assessment on Dr. Frost. So it's worth mentioning our assessment model. So last year we did 5 major assessments, or historically we do 5 major assessments. We do a number assessment, a past paper 1, past paper 2, past paper 3. And then last year COVID happened, so we were predicting grades. Now this year, we have done a Dr. Frost assessment for our first one. Now I'll just show you here. This is the assessment that I created basically, which was really easy to create. I'd recommend, if you're interested in Dr. Frost, go onto the website, and there's a nice long video to show you how to use all the features. But one I especially like is this export to Word button here. So if members of staff didn't want to use this as an online assessment, they could just click export to Word and give their learners it as a paper assessment. But as you can see, for staff engagement, pretty much everyone in the department used the online assessment, which was great. Some people used a combination, and the kind of proportion of those combinations, some people used 30% online, but the majority of people used over 90% of the online assessment. So it was widely used, which was great. And then this is some of the feedback we get from that assessment. So it's similar to the topic tests, but this time I've got each one of my questions across the top. So I can see quite clearly here where learners are getting things wrong. And when you scroll across to some of the more difficult questions at the end of the assessment, you can see here we've got big C's of red. So I can see exactly here where I need to do some corrective teaching. I can give some whole class feedback. It's just a really, really useful tool. Also, I can give a bit of feedback on here that will, say if I type in a model answer, I can send that to all of the learners that got that question wrong. So it does reduce teacher workload as well, which is great. So how do we use the feedback grids? So I asked all of the members of the staff in the department how they would use the feedback grids, and this is some of the responses. I'm not going to read them all out, but the general gist is to look at common errors and to do gap analysis and to use it for whole class feedback, which is obviously extremely useful, especially in FE when we've only got pretty much a year to try and get learners the grade they deserve, or grade 4. So we also asked staff about learner engagement. So engagement has been mixed because we've implemented it in different ways. So members of staff have got different experiences of engagement. But some of the comments say here, overall, they find it easy to use, but need to be motivated to use it. So that's obviously a big issue. We need to look into how we can best motivate these students, which I'm going to talk about in a minute with our next steps. And I thought this comment was interesting. In some cases, students tend to engage with this as an alternative to workbook style resources. So if you've got a device in a classroom, or if a learner's got a phone that will work on Dr. Frost, then they've almost got a whole textbook at hand. And it's even better than that, really. It's a self-marking textbook that logs all of your answers and basically gives us as teachers a massive picture about what you can and you can't do. So it's extremely valuable. There we go. So a bit more staff feedback. Would you use Dr. Frost to do a formative in the future? No one said no, which is great. And there were some mixed reasons for why people said maybe. One of the major ones was that there aren't reform AQA questions on Dr. Frost, which is a bit of a downside because we are an AQA college. We use AQA for our GCSE exams. So that kind of led to a big debate about what a formative assessment should look like in FE. Now, look, many of my colleagues think, right, it's a resit course, so it's got to be practice papers. But when you look at the feedback we get from Dr. Frost, it's so valuable that we want to try and, going forward, we want to try and do a mixture of the two, which I'm going to talk a bit about in a minute. But yeah, some teachers are really passionate about just using past papers, which I kind of disagree with, but we want to reach a compromise and make sure that as many members of staff can be involved as possible. So learner feedback on Dr. Frost. First of all, we asked about ease of access, because I know a lot of learners use old phones. Some learners struggle to get Teams on the phones even. And you can see here that quite a lot of learners use either phones or a PC or a laptop. And some of the comments about this are also very varied. So some learners say good on the go. And then some negative points, so much on the screen. Now I think that learner was using an older phone, so it can be a little bit fiddly on there. And here the learner's saying there's quite a lot of notifications and quite difficult to find a subject. I'd agree with that. So going forward, we're going to look at better ways to signpost learners to activities that will kind of bridge those gaps in knowledge. How easy do you find Dr. Frost to access? So you can see the majority of learners here have said neutral to extremely easy. And then 3 learners have said somewhat not easy. So that might be due to the tech. Now we need to delve a bit more deeply into this and to find out exactly why. Here's some general learner comments, and again, very mixed. So I find the site a bit confusing, so that came up before. The computer lesson doing Dr. Frost is one of my favourites. I swear I didn't make that up. A learner actually said that. And she really liked the retrieval aspect of it. So I would set a topic test to assess the learning that was done the week before. And she really liked trying to retrieve that information.
Hi Ben, just to let you know, there's 2 minutes left.
Brilliant, all right. So some learners said they don't like it. When I probed this learner further, they couldn't say why. So it might just be a general dislike of having to do extra maths or having to do maths in general. But again, we need to delve deeper into that. We didn't know we need to use Dr. Frost. So this was a learner I spoke to in a corridor who I don't teach, but this just shows how we've had many different approaches to using Dr. Frost across college. Maybe going forward, we might look at a more cohesive way of doing it. I like to practice topics and learn new things at home. Now this was from a higher learner, and we found that higher learners really, really like Dr. Frost. especially for learning new things. And I teach higher learners in a class with foundation learners, so it allows me to be able to stretch and challenge them really easily. The topic tests are hard. Yeah, and this came up from a member of staff as well. Many learners are saying that some of the topic tests are a bit too hard, and we found engagement with Dr. Frost was better when we created our own tasks. Okay, which was important to know. So next steps, we really want to encourage self-study. So you can see here from our survey, only 4 learners out of 19 used it for self-study. So we want to encourage that a lot more. And some ideas from members of staff were a prize incentive. So Dr. Frost has really good tracking of how much time you spend on it, how many questions you've answered. So we might turn it into a competitive element, which is happening already with the higher learners, to be honest. There's a really healthy competition going on there between the staff as well, actually, seeing who can get the learners to get the most points or the most questions answered. So improving the learner experience again. So it seems the learners have edged the bets here. I wouldn't take too much from this. I'm going to take this with a pinch of salt, because most of them have said okay, but in the previous slide, only 4 of them have used for self-study, so we can't really draw much from that. Supporting colleagues as well, we found there were some CPD needs, so I'm probably going to run a workshop again to show colleagues how to use a lot of the features. And the main next step we're going to look at is looking at parallel assessment. So as I was talking about before, having a combination of paper and online assessment, and sliding these Dr. Frost assessments in between these paper assessments. Then we can almost see those gaps from the paper assessments, and then we can direct learners to activities to fill in those gaps and revise, ready for that next past paper. So it'll almost be a practice for the main exam, and they'll get used to revising and using Dr. Frost to plug those gaps in knowledge. And that's it.
Oh, thank you very much, Ben. That was wonderful. I think we have to move very swiftly on to Solihull. Are you, is it Holly or Sarah?
Yeah, hello. I think I'm going to do the talking, but Sarah's going to load up the PowerPoint for me because my connection was really slow. So.
All right. Oh, okay.
I'm doing.
Lovely.
Sarah,
Okay.
are you all right to share the screen, Sarah?
I should.
Or you can just start talking, Holly.
Just start.
I choose share screen. Just 1 second, because I'm not used to Zoom, so I'm.
There's a green button down at the bottom.
You got it. I'll start. Oh, here we go.
Okay.
There we go.
Is that it?
Yes, you're doing it.
Yeah, it looks like it's
happening.
loading. Lovely. Thank you. So Sarah and I work at Solihull College and University Centre. Sarah leads the maths department, and I'm one of the GCSE maths lecturers. And we obviously moving forward, we're always looking at new ways to try and engage our students outside of the classroom. We're really fortunate, I think, this September that we have been allowed to have our students still in college for their maths lessons. So we're not doing purely remote learning. We are seeing our students still face to face, 2 hours a week in the classroom. But for us, we feel this isn't enough time really for the students still to be moving forward and progressing. So we really wanted our students to be engaging with some online work generally outside of the lesson to support what we're delivering. There was a few key things we wanted to get out of that. We wanted to obviously start creating an independent learner, and we wanted them to engage online and see the impact of what that's having within the classroom environment as well for them. So next slide, please, Sarah. So we sort of thought, okay, we need to keep this simple, because I always find if we overcomplicate things with students, things get lost in translation, barriers start coming up, refusal to do something because they can't get on to something, they can't get started with something. So for us, we've got a really nice system called MathsWatch, where we can create assignments and produce assignments and assign them to our students. And for me, it was thinking about, okay, if we want them to engage online, what is the best way they're going to be able to do this? So I sort of started off with two different directions. We had a preparation task and a consolidation task set for students. So and we just put them out there. They were all introduced to the system. They were told that, you know, the expectation was that they were going to have a go at some online work in between their lessons. And we just sort of for the first few weeks saw how they got on. And it was really clear after the first few weeks that students were not attempting the consolidation activities. For them, it was obvious that there was no value to that to them. They'd consolidated in the lesson for us, and therefore why do it again once they'd left the classroom? But what was really nice to see was that these preparation tasks that we were creating, because they were short and because they were very to the point, nice, straightforward questions, we had a really good uptake on the preparation tasks. So then moving forward, we were like, right, okay, let's stick with this idea of preparing a student for a lesson, and in that we could then also use our sequencing. So if we were going to deliver something in the lesson, say for example at this point we're doing algebra, I would prepare a short preparation task on MathsWatch which linked in just skills and knowledge of things we'd done already in the classroom that needed to be brought to the forefront of their mind again before we started algebra, so that they can then have a go at those skills again, and also put in there some of the skills that we'd be learning in the lesson they were about to do. So even before they enter the classroom, they're bringing forward their knowledge and they're thinking about what they know about that topic. Sarah, you're right to show it onto the next slide. So as soon as we started doing this, the uptake with preparation improved hugely. I deliver maths with public service students from level 1, 2 and 3 public services. So they're all a varied range of maths levels within the groups. So for me to prepare them for the lesson was really key. And very quickly they could see the value in preparing themselves for the lesson. And to start off with, I was sort of, when they came into the class, I'd used to have the MathsWatch up on screen and I would say, okay, let's see who is prepared for today. And I'd start to go through, okay, so-and-so is, oh, this person is, and why are you not, how come you haven't had a go at this? And almost highlighting to the group, okay, who's ready for the lesson? And that was really powerful because straight away students did not want to be pulled up for the fact that they weren't ready or prepared for the lesson. A lot of students, one of the student comments that came out quite early on was, one student thought it was funny just to shout out, say, oh, I did it on the bus just as I was coming in. And for me, I thought that was brilliant because I then threw that back out to the rest of the class and I was like, well, actually, do you know what? That is fantastic because you've literally prepared yourself half an hour before the lesson, and that's perfect because really for preparation, we want you to be doing it as close to the lesson as possible so it's really fresh in your mind. And therefore, then I was saying to students, well, if you're using your MathsWatch on your phone, because it is a nice, easy system to use on your phone, why not do it on the bus as you're coming into college, on the way into your lesson? And then when we were discussing this with our team members, one of them was like, do you know what, they've got free Wi-Fi on buses now as well, so you know, why can't they should be doing it on there before their lesson if that's going to be the best way for them to prepare and be ready for the lesson? And then it sort of changed the way students looked at, okay, traditionally I feel like if I'm in maths I should be sat at a desk preparing myself with resources in front of me or on a computer, whereas we're saying, well, no, actually you can be doing it on the move, on the bus, before you just before you arrive at college. And then we had a look at the idea of this preparation, because when they raised that, it was key that actually they needed to prepare as close to the lesson as possible. So we decided to throw out reminders to students, and we've done this in a few different ways to try and find the best way. But at the moment, we're just piloting a text message system. So 48 hours before the lesson, the student receives a prompt, which is an automated message that I've created that says, don't forget to prepare for your maths lesson on whatever day it is. Any problems, contact Holly. And the next lesson on from that, there was in my group of 19, there was another 3 students that uptook the preparation task that had never done one before because they'd had that prompt to say, remember to do this, because obviously I only see them once a week. There's that big gap where they forget So to have that prompt and a reminder, the uptake already improved just after that first week. And one student actually came in who had not done any and was really bold to say to me as soon as he walked in, I've done my preparation for the lesson. You know, and for him to say that was brilliant. So now all I tend to do when I walk into my lessons is I don't show the results on screen. All I have to do is ask the group now, okay, who's ready for the lesson? And they know what I mean now. I mean, have you done your preparation? And they're all really keen to put their hands up and say, oh, I've done it, you know, and they'll even have a competition of who got the highest percentage. But I keep saying to them, it doesn't matter what percentage you get, as long as you've given it a go. You know, and you're preparing yourself and you're looking ahead to see what's happening in the lesson. That's what I want you to get out of this. So for them, the value is being ready for the lesson, and therefore being able to answer more questions right at the start of the topic. They can, you know, they've already pulled a lot of knowledge to the forefront of their mind as soon as we start a topic, which is brilliant, really. And we did some on Menti, we did some feedback to say, how are you feeling about this? And a lot of the students, the majority of the students said that it improved how confident they felt about their maths. There was a couple of people that said that it made them feel worse about their maths. I think there was a very small percentage, and that was because they were finding the questions too challenging. And then there was a little bit of feedback from the higher grade students saying, well, actually, do you know what? I feel like it needs to be more challenging. So then I've had to differentiate it a little bit more so that it does start off simpler, like an exam paper, I suppose, and move on to some hard questions. But it's never more than a 15-minute task for those students. The one group that we're looking at in depth is a level 2 public services group, which in the past, level 2's been, especially in that department, has been a really difficult group to engage. And for some reason, they're really into it and they've really taken up the challenge. And from those 19 students, 8 of them now as well have said we offered them out a exam skills prep session as well in the week, an extra hour of remote learning a week as part of the Department of Education, their catch-up funding that they've given us, and straight away 8 of the students have started those lessons this week as well. And I think they're just seeing the value of, actually, do you know what, I need to be doing this outside of the lesson as well. So for us now, we've got students that have got 2 hours with us. They have hub support once a week for an hour, which is always been offered. They've got an hour session with one of our teachers, Martina, remotely, and that's an exam skills prep session. And obviously they're doing their preparation for me as well. So really they're having more than 4 hours a week now, the majority of the students in this one group. So for us now, moving forward, we want to see the impact of this on assessment results come January onwards. So for me, we needed time to go, okay, let's set this up, let's tweak it, let's change some bits, take their feedback so that these preparation tasks are valuable to them. And give them their time to fit that into their routine every week. So for me, really, from January to Easter, now I'm going to be measuring the impact of that and, you know, how it's improving their maths, having this extra engagement outside of the classroom. So it's worked really well. The only struggle we've had is with level 1 students, purely because they haven't got the skills at the moment to do the independent study. They're not in the right frame of mind. So me and Sarah are also thinking of some different ways to help them prepare for their lessons, which aren't leaving them to do it on their own, but bringing in other teachers remotely to help them. So that's something else that's come out of it that we're going to have a look at as well. But then one of our people who deliver level 4 in our university centre at the college also said what was great from the research was that actually we're preparing these students to become level 4 students, because they need their independent learning skills when they reach a level 4 standard. And we're already starting to embed that into our learners from a level 2 into level 3. That's 3 years worth of us embedding these independent learning skills into students before they even attempt or move on to a level 4 programme. So they were really keen to see that coming out of it as well. Sarah, is there anything else I've missed that you want to add?
No, I don't think so. I'm very aware that I've got everybody around me at home at the moment as well. Everyone's just suddenly descended. So been on mute. So I do apologise for that if you hear extra noises from the kitchen. But no, I think you've covered pretty much everything there. It's been great listening to everything we've done. So thank you, Holly.
Okay, just any questions, obviously pop them in the chat then. And I think that's it really.
Yes, we've got about 2 minutes. So if anybody has any questions about anything, a question for Ben or for Nicola and Gillian, pop it in the chat.
Yeah, someone's put in there is like the idea of the prep tasks. Actually, another thing that came out of it, we've just merged with the adult learning department at college, and they're really struggling to get their adult students to engage with anything outside of the classroom. So they're now going to attempt the idea of preparation tasks instead of consolidation tasks to see if they get the same impact with their adults as well.
Yeah, and certainly, you know, thinking from the old days of teaching GCSE, getting people to do work outside and before really was the holy grail. So
yeah,
you know, I think it's a pretty remarkable. But
yeah.
have you found a difference in students' attitude this year than from?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I think they're keen to start the lessons, and because they know what's coming. And some of them, when we start the lesson and we do the say the first sort of starter activities, they'll be like, oh, they said to me, oh, I've done this already last night. And I was like, you have, absolutely. So therefore you should be able to do this really easily now. So yeah, it's really interesting, just the impact it's had on them. And I think I've been lucky in terms of the groups this year that they've actually given it a go. It's been hard to pull them all into it, but as soon as we've still got the odd 2 or 3 in each group that haven't had a go at it yet, but do you know, there's a clear impact that's having on those students. They're nowhere near as engaged as those that are giving it a go and joining in really, and I think it's creating a nice atmosphere in the classroom.
Thank you. Has anyone got a question for Ben or for Nicola or Gillian? I wish we could have seen your whiteboard, a demonstration of your whiteboards, Ben, because that's a lovely sight. Just say 2 words about your whiteboards.
Say that again, sorry.
Can you just say a couple of words about how you use the whiteboards on Dr. Frost?
So I like to use them for starter activities. And they're kind of similar to what we did last week, like a brain dump kind of activity. Write down everything you know about a certain topic. Yeah, I mean, they can be used for any style of kind of maths question as well. So I really like how you can change to isometric paper, you can change to squared grids. So it's really nice for teaching shape as well. And I think especially if you've got learners struggling in a class and if you're teaching online, that is, and you're sharing your screen and you don't want to move away from that screen for the other learners, say they're doing questions from it and someone's struggling, you can direct them to their whiteboard. So you're not disrupting the lesson and you're taking a learner away and showing them through a question or giving them prompts, visual prompts. So yeah, it's just basically a big collaborative kind of whiteboard. Is it collaborative?
Yeah, no. Well, it's a big...
Kind of, yeah. I can write on learners' whiteboards and I can see all of their whiteboards at the same time, which I love. So you can see exactly how they're getting on. And it's worth having a go if you haven't already. And you don't need an account, I don't think, to use it. So
I think you have to be part of an institution, don't you? You can't do it as an individual. You have to sign in through your institution.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure, actually. It's been a while since we set everything up, but I think I've got a student account on there as well. So yeah, I think if you do it with a personal email, it's going to be a student account. But yeah.